Welcome to the Animation Station Podcast, episode 102. My name is Josh, and joining me today I have the extremely talented voice actor, Michelle Rojas. How you doing, Michelle?
Hi, doing well. How are you?
Pretty good. Now, first off, Michelle, can you tell our wonderful audience what you do for a living?
I am a voice actor, and some other times I work in production, and I've just kind of been all over the place, honestly.
So, I said at the beginning I'm not going to ask you those, same questions, but I am going to ask you those same questions. So what made you want to get into voice acting?
Voice acting, I actually kind of went into because I was doing a lot of different kinds of work at the time because I needed stuff that was flexible for me. Because I was taking care of two different families and it was really hectic. And I got to a place in my life at that time where I wasn't doing anything artistically. I've always done a lot of performing arts, so a lot of music, so, playing instruments, singing, and acting, and I just didn't have any of those things in my life, so I was like, I really need to start doing something, or else I'm gonna go crazy, So that's when I started looking into voiceover. I had a ton of friends that did voiceover, so I just started doing it. I was like, because the cool thing about voiceover is that unlike theater acting, which is what I was used to doing before, it takes a lot less time. You don't have to commit to a bunch of shows every night and a bunch of practice. And so it allowed me to stay in the situation that I had going on, but I was able to act at the same time. So that's why I started doing voiceover specifically. I guess that's that.
Was that hard going from something as the theater background into something that is primarily just voice?
It's from theater. I don't think it's as big of a transition as from film, because with theater, when you're acting out to an audience, that audience may not be right there in front of you. Everything kind of still has to be large. There's still a lot of voice involved because you have to act to a crowd. Yeah. So in that aspect, because in voiceover, everything is put on the voice. They can't see your body. Mm-hmm. They can't see what you're doing. In anime specifically, the characters are, animated just sort of a lot of times it's just lip flaps moving. So really all of that has to go into your voice instead of what you could show otherwise with your body. So there is that element where you have to focus on that.
So you've done voice acting for anime, and you've done voice acting for video games. Mm-hmm. Which do you prefer? I mean, because I know a lot of the things when you go from the interviews that we've had, there's a lot of people that prefer the anime as to the video games.
It's definitely, each one is just such a different animal, because what's fun about video game work is that, you're not dubbing to picture. That's the thing about anime that's always more restricting, is because you're dubbing to picture. So even if you get a take that you really like, it may be too long, it may be too short, then you have to alter it, then you have to a lot of times you have to crunch things in to fit, just because a lot of times our English tends to be longer than Japanese for a lot of things. So in that way it can be constricting, whereas voiceover for video games, although if you're going from a Japanese video game, again, dubbing over into English, sometimes you also still have those constrictions, but usually it's at least not as constricting. you usually just kind of match about the length of the original audio file, but it doesn't have to be exact. And then when you're recording for the first time, just your own thing, you can do whatever you want with it. You can do the read however you really feel like you want to do that read. So in that way, video games are a lot of fun, because you can kind of do anything you want. But anime is definitely it's fun in its own thing. It's just different, you know. Being able to go in and actually see my character is also a really cool thing, because with video games you don't usually get to see anything because you're in there first and they animate to your voice later, whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, you know, that's the thing of it. So being able to actually see what's going on in the scene is really great. And just being able to see what your character physically is doing and the expressions they're making. And a lot of times you can get really wacky with anime. Like anime is just so all over the place. Yeah. And which doesn't happen as often in the video games. So it's a lot of fun.
So you had a more of that theater background when you, like, acting wise, before you got into voice acting. So was that something that you had been doing for, like, since you were a kid? Like, what was, like, was acting your hobby when you were little?
Yeah. I started acting when I was in middle school in 7th grade. Before that, I had been in band. I was in band since 5th grade. I played clarinet, and then later I played saxophone for jazz band.
Nice.
And I tried that entire time. I tried to move to oboe, and they wouldn't let me do it because I was first chair clarinet. And they're like, "No, you can't. We can't lose you."
Chairs.
Yeah, and I was like, "I mean, I don't, but I want to play a different instrument." And but yeah, so I played clarinet the entire time, and then also added on saxophone in high school. But yeah, so I did those, and it was actually my English teacher at the time was also a drama teacher at the community theater, and she's the one that got me into theater when I was in middle school. So then from then on, I started doing theater, and I continued to do it in college. So yeah, like that was just one of the many. I did so many extracurriculars. Like, I don't even know how I used to manage all of that.
Yeah, see, it's one of those, like, I wish our school would have had more of the extracurriculars than they did. Like, we had choir and basketball, and if you were on the basketball team, you were more than likely also on the choir team, like, choir, because it was a really small little private school that I went to. So, there wasn't a lot of everything. When they did have any sort of drama production, it was like everybody goes for it because it's not anything that we get all the time.
Yeah.
Not until, I got into doing like other stuff like community type stuff. That's when, I was able to spread my wings. But I mean, yeah, I wish we would have had anything like that. Like a band? No, we couldn't. Like,
yeah, you don't have the students for it. Yeah. We barely had the band, and we were a fairly large school. So
hey, at least you had chairs in your band. We didn't even have chairs, nor bands, nor instruments. Yeah. So what type of? You were in like I take it like the drama department.
Yes. Yeah. So I also did that. Go ahead. No. Go ahead. Yeah, that's fine.
So what type of things would you do in your drama? Like, do you have anything that you remember performing?
Let me see. One time I actually played a man in one of our plays. Nice. Yeah, and I was like, it was our teacher at first was like, I don't know if I want to do that, but then she ended up going for it because what I had done, like I had auditioned for she was letting us audition for two or three, I think three different characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I had done monologues for two female characters, but then I also did a monologue for this character. And I mean, obviously, I did not expect to be cast as that one. I was just doing it because we needed to do three. And all the other characters were just like not really ones that I felt confident about. But like the monologue for him, like I was like, oh, I really get this. And apparently I really did get that. And so she was like, you were the best one for that one. And so she just went ahead and did it. So that's probably the only cool thing about my high school drama campaign was that I played a dude in a theater show. So that was pretty cool. I had to wear a fake beard and everything, so I had to have the spirit gum on my face, and
Nice.
it was awful. I hate spirit gum. It's the worst. Never again.
Well,
But yeah.
I was kind of the opposite. Like there was a role, and they were like, it's like in our class we had 7 boys and 2 girls. So if there was 3 girl roles, it's like, well, some guys got to do it. So I was like, okay, cool. I always wanted those. There's like, I'll shave my legs. What do you want me to do? I'll do whatever. Just put me in a dress. I'll do it. It'll be fun. I'll rock it. And I never got those roles. So I was like, oh, it's kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it was definitely a lot of fun. It was definitely like something that not everybody gets to do.
So when did it really click for you? Like you wanted to be an actor? Was it back in like high school and all those, or was it not? Or was it until you got to college?
It definitely. I never really saw myself going in a like a professional career as an actor, like keeping it as a hobby and as something I would continue to do otherwise, definitely. But I had never really thought about like, oh, I'll make a career of being an actor. I was a lot more focused on music. So yeah, I was a lot more focused on music in general. And so that was kind of what I was going for. I was going to music school, and unfortunately, I had to change because of family stuff, so I could be with them more.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, really, like the focus was kind of just going into music careers. I learned recording, engineering. Audio engineering, and just all sorts of music production, and I was very focused on vocal performance and all of that stuff. So the acting stuff really didn't start happening for me until I was in that situation where I was like, I need to be doing something, but pretty much anything musically I could be doing would take so much time. So that's why, again, I kind of went into the voiceover stuff, and it just sort of grew from there, because at that point, you know, it was on my mind to start doing this professionally, just because I hadn't really thought about it before. But then at that time I was like, maybe I can do this professionally, because it's something that works better with my family situation than anything musically was. So yeah, so it was around then, and that was in college.
Okay.
So
Did like were you a big fan of not just necessarily like anime, but like animation before you started before you became a voice actor?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, anime, cartoons, video games, like the whole gamut of things, and just nerd culture, you know. Yeah, just all of that. Huge fan.
Do you have any favorites? Well, we'll do this. We'll do a two-parter. Like, do you have any favorites when you were growing up, and do you have any favorites now?
Um,
Like,
man, it's
maybe growing up. Like, I remember growing up. Like, I was like super big into like if we're talking anime, like Digimon and Pokemon, and now it's like, well, my obviously I've matured a bit, so I've like my tastes have changed. Like I'm not still watching the new Adventures of Winnie the Pooh on ABC on Saturday mornings,
mhm.
mainly because they took it off, or else I would. But yeah, so I mean, yeah, it's like something like that, like something that you remember watching when you were a kid that really hooked you, and then what your how your senses have changed, and kind of what you're into now.
What's interesting about that is that my tastes really haven't changed, and I've maintained the Macross series as one of my absolute favorite series since I was in kindergarten, like since I was a little kid. I don't know why I liked it so much when I was a little kid. I can't explain it. Don't like I don't know. I don't know what that is. I don't know why I was like 5 years old and watching a space opera and like loving every moment of it. Because also, if you've ever watched Macross, I'm talking
Like the
I'm
old
talking
Macross.
SDF, yeah, not the new stuff that the kids are into these days. Like I honestly don't know how that. Well, I guess when I was a kid, like things would hold my attention. Like my attention span, I guess, was really good. Um, so like even stuff that's kind of like long and drawn out and like war torn stuff, I loved it. Like I always loved Gundam series.
Hmm.
But same thing, like when I was a little kid, I'm just watching like a show where like not a whole lot's happening and they're just like talking about war stuff and I'm just like, this is great, you know? Like I don't know. Um I guess it's kind of weird, but
Ah, no, it's not
yeah,
weird. Like,
like
yeah, I'm right there with you. Like, I remember when they first like when Toonami started like really kicking off, and
mhm,
like just because like it was all new, it was completely different from any of the like Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network stuff that we had at the time. So it was like,
mhm,
oh well, I'm gonna watch this, and like I remember watching like me and my friends, which is bananas now because I'm sure we would have got made fun of, but like watching Sailor Moon and she'd be like, "Oh
mhm.
my gosh, she totally transformed! I didn't even know how you would do that." And just like watching all of these type of things, but yeah, like your Outlaw Stars and stuff that is like even like when we got it was dated, but
Mhm.
even like just watching, you're like, it still looks great. I'm still gonna watch this. Like when they started bringing like all those old Gundams over and
Mhm.
bringing in like Robotech and stuff like that, like so stuff from
Mhm.
the '80s that we're getting in like the 2000s, and you're just sitting there watching it, and you're like, yeah, I like this show. It's good.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I just well, I kind of like giant robots in general and I've
Mm-hmm.
always been drawn to like really like sci-fi stuff. So that probably contributed to that too because like Ghost in the Shell is like one of my big favorites. Evangelion's one of my big
Mm-hmm.
favorites. And so stuff that just has like a lot of technology in it. Um, I've always been drawn to stuff like that, and that's just the same for me now. Although I think that I watch a ton of comedies now too, though. So like I love Umaru-chan. I love like really like I guess lighthearted comedies now, and that's kind of something I've added on to. So like My Love Story, just I've grown in that way, which is a weird way to grow, maybe, but I just enjoy stuff like that more, and it's probably because after you've been working all day, like at a point you just kind of want to watch something that doesn't take a lot of thought and is just kind of like a fun thing and maybe not necessarily a war torn drama.
Yeah, you don't want to go record a war torn drama and then go and watch the war torn drama because then you're like, the world is pitiful.
Hmm.
There's nothing left.
Yeah, it's just like a lot too. Like one time I was binging Breaking Bad. Like
Hmm.
after it had all came out, I had never saw it, and I was just watching episodes and episodes. There were days I was just like, I can't watch any more Breaking Bad. It's just like too much at a time. I need to watch something else.
Yeah,
Um,
oh God, it's a rough show for sure. So,
yeah.
so you were really big in the music. That's what you had originally wanted to do. Like, do you?
Hmm.
What are some of your biggest musical influences?
Musical influences.
Which
Man.
again is like a vague question. Like, what are some of your favorite genres?
Oh, okay. I tend to like strangely, even though I'm really big into singing, it's I'm really into non-vocal music of all types. So like if it's like a classical instrumentals or
Hmm.
piano or like incredibly electronic music, EDM.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like I just love instrumental stuff. In general, that's probably my favorite. Um, but then vocally, a lot of the music that, at least my most favorite artists, are usually Japanese artists, like Supercell and Claris. Um, but yeah, aside from that, it's kind of like a lot of show tunes and like Idina Menzel and like just it's kind of like I always feel like my tastes are so very divided, so it's like I could be listening to like very experimental like uh uh almost like noisish sounding music, I guess, and then
Hmm.
and then it's just like Disney songs and Broadway and like
Yeah, my
on my
shuffle.
shuffle
Yeah,
list.
my
Yeah.
shuffle's awful. Like, I wouldn't recommend anybody listen to it because I'm right there with you with the EDM. Like, that's why I love K-pop, because we've kind of gone away from it in like the U.S. charts, but like in
Hmm.
K-pop, they're like, nah, all of our stuff is just purely EDM. Here you go.
Yeah.
And so that's why
Hmm.
I just love that stuff. And then like it's one of those where like it reminds me of the good old days.
Yeah, Korean music is I really like the direction that it's going. Just it's because when I listen to the radio here now, it's so hard for me to find something that I actually like listening to. I feel like American music's getting kind of in a weird place.
Yeah, and it
But
doesn't help. It doesn't help that they play the same thing over and over and over again.
mhm.
That kind of stinks. Like, for whatever reason, at least here in Oklahoma, like they are stuck on that one Ed Sheeran song, and like
Mm,
whenever you turn it on, it's just like I can't even remember, like
mhm.
something on like Barefoot on the Grass or whatever, however it goes. And I'm just like sitting there, and I'm like, yeah, Barefoot on the Grass. Yeah, I know, I got it. I mean, I'll change it to the next channel. Barefoot on the Grass. I'm like, okay, okay. I
Yeah,
guess I guess
it's
we're stuck here.
everywhere. Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. And the other thing, like uh so weird. Like in our country, we have that like battle of who is the loudest. Like everything
Mm-hmm.
production wise is made to be very loud. It's all compressed to just as much as they can to get it as loud as they can, because I guess that gets more attention on the radio. It morphed out of some weird reason. Um, but other countries, don't do that. So I think just as we get louder and louder and louder and just sort of more noisy in our music, and then everybody else stays the same, it's like easier to listen to songs that are coming out of other countries now, just because it's not like assaulting your ears when you listen to it for a little while, because it can be tiring to listen to American music just because of the way that they produce it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Sorry, my phone just I had my phone up here looking at stuff, and it just decided it wanted to go to sleep. Don't
Yeah.
do that. Wake up. Um, okay. So going into your voice acting, you've done like I think probably the first role that I really was like into you with was Toka in Date Alive. That was my
Mm-hmm.
first one. Where I was like, okay, I got you. I'll remember this name. It's like whenever I would see, Michelle Rojas, I'd be like, oh, I know exactly who that is. Was there a moment for you when you knew that, hey, I can do this voice acting thing. This is what I'm gonna do from now on. Was there a moment that kind of like clicked for you?
um, Man, I don't know that there was ever like a moment. Like everything for me anyway, like there was never a like a single role or anything
Mm.
that sort of uh got me a whole lot of attention suddenly or anything, like that that I feel like maybe some other actors get, where it's just like, oh, they're doing things whatever, part here, and then they suddenly get like a really big one.
Yeah,
um so I don't feel like that's probably just not happened to me yet. Like I wouldn't say that like I love Toka, and people definitely know me for her the most. And it's like it's such a popular show, and it's getting another season.
it's getting a
Um,
third.
yeah, it's getting
Oh
another
man,
season. So I mean, it's still going. It definitely has its fans. But it's not uh like I feel like, kind of like how Briner kind of has like My Hero was
yeah.
his big thing, and then suddenly, everybody knew who Briner was, and like so I've never really had like a huge moment like that. So everything's kind of just been gradual for me over time, where like in the beginning, I was kind of doing it as a way to be creative, but I guess just as I kept booking things, it was kind of like, oh, like I'm still booking things, and I'm still working, and I'm getting more work. So it was kind of a more like a gradual ramp up to being like, oh, I guess I can. This is like a viable option. So it definitely wasn't like a single moment. But people definitely do know me for Toka like the most. And I think it has a lot to do with she was my first lead. And what's weird about Toka, or that I booked Toka, was that was so early. It was so early on when I had just started working with Funimation. Um, she was like one of the first things I booked, and I was really surprised that I had gotten a lead that quickly at the time. Um, and so, because back then, we always auditioned. And what was interesting about her is that I wasn't on the Data Live audition list um, at all. Like I wasn't on that list because I was so new, and the director for it didn't really know me. He had worked with me previously though, so I did work with him a little bit, but he wasn't that familiar with me. Um, and I was in there, and I talked to the talent coordinator. I was like, "Hey, is it okay if I read for this show, just if you have any open slots?" Like I was like, I don't want to cause any trouble, but if there is time, like if I could be put on that list. She was like, "Yeah, whatever." And so she did. She put me on the list. I guess there was an opening. And I went and I read for it. And I read for Toka not thinking I would get her.
Okay.
I actually thought I was going to get another character, but I had read for her. And then they booked me on it, and they were like, "Oh, you got the lead. You got Toka." I was like, "Oh, okay." I was like at it because also again I was so new. I didn't think I would book a lead. Um, so that was really shocking because firstly I wasn't on that audition list, and then I booked the lead. So it was that was kind of a wild time. But she's been so great. Like I get people all the time like that still talk about her, and that show's like not even remotely new anymore, but people continue to talk about Date Alive. Um, yeah.
And that just kind of goes to show you, kids, if you want something, just put yourself on the list. Just ask, because if you hadn't asked about that, then
I wouldn't have been in it at all.
So if
Yeah.
something and you're like, it doesn't. There's no harm in asking. Like the
Yeah.
worst that she could have said was no. Best that she said was
Right.
yes, and you booked the lead.
And I wouldn't like suggest so that I talked to the talent coordinator specifically. So let me say that like don't
Don't
up to
go
a
straight to
director and
the
be like,
voice director
"Hey."
and be like, hey.
um right. Don't be like, "Hey, like can I like put me on your audition list?" No, it was straight up like I talked to the talent coordinator, and it was totally a thing where I was just like, if there's not time, it's fine. Like, don't go out of your way to do anything because you really shouldn't be doing that. I shouldn't have been doing it, but I did. And but yeah, don't like go up to a director and be like, "Hey, can I be in your show?" or "Hey, can I be on your auditions?" Like that's their own personal thing. But if you do talk to your talent coordinator, sometimes what the talent coordinator does is they will just kind of pull from a list that the director may not have given them just because they have more time to accept more auditions. So some of those that are on that list might just be ones that the coordinator pulled and not necessarily requested by the director. So, if you're lucky to be in that sort of situation, which is the sort of situation that I got with Date Alive, then you'll get put on those auditions. But then if it hadn't been the case, like where sometimes the director can be like, "No, I don't want to see anybody else," or like, don't fill up my time. Like, I don't want that. And then you won't be able to do that because coordinator won't be able to do anything. So, but yeah, like, it really, if you are able to do something like that, I mean, you may as well.
Gotcha. Now, do you have any? Trying to phrase that a good way. Do you have any? Actually, I'm just gonna skip that question because it was gonna be dumb. So, you're also an ADR director.
I have directed in the past. I'm not doing anything right now.
Well, what exactly is like? Because I mean, we've had like voice directors on, but like, what exactly does like an ADR director do?
Okay, so ADR is just to specify that it's for a dub. So an ADR director is just going to be whoever is directing the acting for a dub.
Okay.
As opposed to a director that may be overseeing like the entire project or something. They specify because, you still have all of the original language credits. So it's to specify specifically that it's for the dub and not anything on the original crew. But yeah, so the ADR director is going to be the one that directs you creatively in the booth. So it's for they're going to be looking over the entire project as a whole. They're going to know everything about that project. They're the ones that when you go in, they tell you all about this is who your character is, this is what's going on in the show, and this is what's going on in your scene. So they're going to be your source of information for everything you need to know to make the right acting choices. Okay. And so, and then on top of that, you could be doing your reads, and then if the director wants you to do something differently with it, like it's like, we also need to consider that this other thing is going on with her family and and all this stuff. So this is like a really big thing to that character, and and we need this sort of emotion. Like they can give you some of the underlying context too, so that because looking at like a sentence as written, you could be like, oh, this is said this way. But then if you have that sort of like other context of like all of the conflict that's happening in that character, that can give you a completely different read. So the director helps lead you through the show that way.
Okay. So what did you help direct?
I worked on some. I worked on Xenoverse, which was a game, Dragon Ball Xenoverse. That one, whoa, boy, man, Xenoverse is. If you're familiar with Xenoverse, they go around through different dimensions and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like the show, but then they go to these different instances, and then something different happens, and so it was a lot of sort of like wrangling what's going on at that moment.
And I imagine because when I remember playing it, and like you had like the multiple outcomes. So did you have to do like the same scene over and over and over, but just different variations of the same scene?
Yeah, basically. But the thing that was so hard about that is the way that we get scripts, and the scripts are like they're technically in order, but since that's happening, we could be recording a scene, and then it'll go to a completely different scene, and then it may go back to that other scene. So just the order of the scripts were not helping us out. Because it was doing the same thing to us while we were recording. Like it would have us here, and then it would have us go somewhere else, and then it would have us go to a different place, and then we're back here, doing the alternate of this thing. So it was a lot of trying to identify where we are in the story, what we're doing. We'd have to read through it and be like, oh, it's this thing at this moment. Okay. Like a lot of that. Yeah. And then there are some other times when, especially if we got stuff back for pickups or something, where they would give us give us lines and not tell us where they came from. So, yeah. So I feel like
how does that work?
Usually when you get something, when that ends up happening, we try to find it, but if we can't find it, we usually just have to play it as generic as possible. So I remember that Trunks in particular, because he is kind of like a character that's leading you around, he had a lot of lines that seemed like they were just out of nowhere. That were just kind of like off by themselves. And so really we would look at the line and just kind of like play it safe. Be like, well, it seems like you're just instructing him here, so I think you're good to just like tutorialize this. Or like it'll be like, oh, I think that they're about to go, fight Raditz or something. Like, I think it's in here. But yeah, I remember Trunks being kind of the most difficult, and it was probably a combination of him having the most lines, and then also just the way we were getting stuff from the game company.
Now, I kind of have a little bit of a question about like those DBZ games, and if you can answer it, that's awesome. If you can't, don't worry about it. But since Funimation like has the dub for all that DBZ, like all of those DBZs, how does it work getting those games in? Does like Funimation do the dub? Like how exactly does that, or like all the voiceover for those games? Like, how exactly does that work? I've always been like curious to
Mm.
see how that how that goes down.
No, Funimation doesn't do the dub for those. Chris Sabat's studio, Okratron, does
Okratron
them.
does it. Okay.
Yeah. And so it's a completely separate thing. It's not like it's licensed through Funimation or anything. It's licensed through I think, is it Bandai?
I think it's
I think
Bandai. Yeah.
Bandai Namco has all of the Dragon Ball stuff.
Okay.
So it's actually through them, and then they get Okratron to do it. And usually, sometimes you have like a conflict, like of where you can do the same voice for the same character. So, for instance, like technically, anytime that we do a voiceover for Funimation, on our contract, we're not supposed to do like or play that character for any other application unless it's cleared. So, like, if somebody wanted me to like or like pay me to like do a like phone voicemail or something as a specific character, I can't go like, "Hi, I'm Koyagami, da 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 da," for this thing, and then get paid for it. Like that's not allowed. Uh,
Okay.
so, but since Toei is ultimately the license holder, and that all of that sort of permission stuff like goes through them, and that's why they're able to use the same cast over on the games.
Okay, because I was just wondering like how those contracts break down, like
Yeah.
especially if you have something that has an anime associated, that has movies associated, that then has a video
Hmm.
game franchise associated. Like if to like I was always wondering like how that like all shake down.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, and
that's interesting.
it'll depend on, it'll depend on whoever ultimately holds the licenses. What's interesting is that somebody who holds licenses for a TV show might not also be the same license holder for a movie.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's the case for the Data Live movie. Like the people who are doing the TV show do not have the license for the movie. It's a different Japanese company that has the movie license. Um, so things like that where you would think, oh, that must all be the same people, right? Like it's not. Like everything is so piecemeal. And then on top of that, sometimes you get conflicts with music rights. So
Yeah.
then the music too, even if it's for a specific show, might the rights to it might be held by somebody that doesn't hold the rights to the TV show, and then you have to get separate rights for those to be able to use them. So probably the easiest example of that, even though it wasn't specifically made for the show, was like Speedgrapher that used Girls on Film as the opening song.
Mm-hmm.
And even though they had the permission to use it in Japan, they couldn't get permission to use it for the English release. It was a totally different like deal, and so they ended up using just another song from the show as the opening instead, which actually I prefer. I really like that opening. So you get weird license stuff all over the place.
Have you gotten like I will say like I've not seen like Love Life Sunshine or Show by Rock, so I don't really know how those how those work, but are those ones where they still use the Japanese audio for the singing, or have they done it with like the English audio with the English voice actors singing?
That's another one of those things where it just depends on what rights they can get.
Yeah.
So for Show by Rock, I believe that one they were able to dub the songs. But for Love Live, they weren't able to get those rights, which is understandable. Like Love Live's Love Live is so very focused on the music,
Yeah.
and I think that the Japanese licensors don't really want there to be a conflict there where there's two tracks of a thing.
Yeah, that
when
makes sense.
they're really focused on selling like the music that they made specifically, you know.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it just depends on what licenses they can get. You know, for any show, uh, Funimation specifically, but really, I mean, any um, any publisher is going to want to get as many rights as they can to a product that they're putting out, you know,
Yeah.
because that just makes sense. Like, you know, you don't want to piecemeal it if you don't have to. If you can just have a whole product and just you know completely put it in English and put it out there, like that's the optimal you know thing that can happen, but that can't always occur.
Yeah, kind of stinks. Maybe we'll get there to or one day that'll just be like the standard, where if it's getting anything done in English, then the English voice actors get to do those songs. Because mainly like
Hmm.
the one that like always like I always bring wow, I can't talk, words are hard. The one that always comes to mind is Mongolian Chop Squad, just
Mm.
because that one I'm like everybody sang in that, like that was all the
Hmm.
voice actors. So that's why like that one always comes to mind, because I'm like, okay, I like this. Like, it was one of the first ones for me where like I got to hear like the English voice actors,
Hmm.
because everything else was always like at the time was you know it, your regular English voice actor, and then you would have your Japanese audio over
Hmm.
it, and it was kind of like a disconnect, like
Yeah.
when you'll hear like I don't know, just throw somebody out there, Chris Patton. You'll hear Chris Patton. He'll just be talking, and then like it'll switch to like a Japanese singer, and you're like, wait, what? How the heck did that happen?
Yeah. Yeah, cuz yeah, that's the whole thing of it is that it can be jarring, especially if it's like an insert song it's in the middle of the show. And you have a character speaking English and then suddenly a completely different voice is
Yeah.
singing at you. And you know, luckily for Card Captor, they've been able to dub all of those songs that because they really go into the middle, like they're just like we're in elementary school now, we're singing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so luckily they've been able to do that. But yeah, like it's complete. It's such a weird deal where the you know the licenses are all over the place. You gotta ask a bunch of different companies just to get like one product really together. Um, so yeah, it's definitely better to be able to dub it, and that's always what everybody's gonna be shooting for. It's
Yeah.
just yeah.
Yeah. Just like I said, maybe one day it'll happen.
Yeah.
Um, do you have anything that is like a personal project for you that you would love to do? Like, I'm gonna give you free reign to do whatever you want. So I mean, it could be an anime, it could be Disney, Cartoon Net, whatever it is. Like, you can do anything animated wise that you want. Is there something that you really want to do, like a star and like create, or anything that you would like to redo? Maybe like maybe you go back and do more Macross.
Mm. That's hard because
It is a very hard question.
I've actually like I've never really thought about like animation specifically if I wanted to like have a an animated series or anything like that made. I'm really into visual novels. I would love to um do my own visual novels. I don't know if you know what those are.
Yeah,
Um
I've played quite a few of them.
okay, all right.
A
But
lot of clicking.
yeah. Um I've always loved visual novels, so those are definitely something I would love to build and create my own stories in that medium. I've just never really thought about animation uh, in that sense. So, and visual novels are definitely much more attainable.
Hmm.
Um, I really want to get back into that whole community. I used to do a lot of different visual novel stuff. Um, and I've kind of fallen out of it at the, you know, because I'm doing a lot more acting now. But
Well, we'll
yeah,
write one, and
I
then
would
you can
love
star
to.
in it. It'll be fun.
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, I would love to actually write my own story. And I'm not a writer, obviously. You know, but I would love to, personal project wise, something I would want to do. And of course make music and do all of that stuff. So I'm trying to get back into doing those things so I can actually complete some personal projects that I want to do.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the big thing with a lot of people right now, especially a lot of the actors that I've talked to. Like everybody's got personal projects that they want to work on, and with how the internet is now with social and everything, like you can reach such a big audience and release it to people to actually like to actually read or view or whatever, you know, it is you're creating. Like you can actually, you know, give it to people pretty readily. So I know a lot of actors right now want to be creating their own products instead of just working for somebody else all the time. That makes sense too.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, all of this is work, and so at a point, you're kind of like, creatively, I just want to make my own thing and do my own thing.
Yeah.
Also.
Well, let's do this. Because we know some artists. So what we'll do is we'll just create a visual novel. We'll all get together. We'll do a nice long Skype chat, and we'll come up with this idea for a visual novel.
Yeah, we'll just do NaNoWriMo one month. And
That'll be fine. Yeah, people do it all the time.
yeah.
So, Michelle, is there anything upcoming or anything that you want to share with our audience, where they basically where they can catch some of your work?
Right now, kind of everything is out in the world. So, I still have, Darling and the Franks is still going on. So, Nana's still on there. And Cardcaptor Sakura Clear Card is still going. So I still have Sonomi on there, Tomio's mom. And that's pretty much all that's going on. Oh, wait, I guess, well, Katana Maidens is happening. And I don't think I ever officially announced that I'm Yuzuki, but I'm Yuzuki in that, and she's the principal of the girls' school.
Oh, nice.
But aside from that, I've got, Acon is coming up. I will be at Acon. So I'll be running around there. I have a few panels, and I'm sure I'll have autographs at some time. And also they're giving me a table, so I imagine I will be at that table at some point if you don't make it to panels or autographs. So you can catch me at Acon in Fort Worth, Texas, and that's in June.
Yeah, and
So
that's this week. And you can also catch us there, so we'll be there, and we'll probably go bug Michelle. So just look forward to that.
Yep.
Michelle, this was super fun.
Yeah.
Now,
Thank you.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for coming on. Now, do you know where any of our where can our fans find you social media wise?
Social media wise, I use Twitter the most, and that's going to be at Little Ramyun, and that's Little Little, and then Ramyun RAMYUN. And then I do have a Facebook, but I never use Facebook. But I am on there. I do check it sometime. Feel free to add me. It's just Michelle Rojas. I don't know what my short code is, but you'll be able to see. I'm sure you'll find it. And then I do have an Instagram. It's the same as my Twitter, Little Ramyun. And YouTube, same thing, Little Ramyun.
Nice. And we'll put all of those links in the show notes, so if you want to check any of it out, just pull it up, click on it, and it'll launch you right there. And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Josh L. Kane. You can find the podcast on Instagram at Animation Station Podcast, on Facebook and Tumblr at Animation Station Podcast, Why we have those, I'm not 100% sure, but we do. You can also find us on Twitter at Animate Podcast, and you can find all of our episodes on iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, basically anywhere that you can download a podcast, and on our website, animationstationpodcast.com. And again, Michelle, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
No problem. All right, so for the Animation Station Podcast, I'm Josh.
And I'm Michelle Rojas.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.